Great job, youngsters and oldsters alike. Guys, not so much, but ladies, those of you who are in a relationship or especially married, you prefer to hear your spouse, your husband say, I love you, right? I know a lot of ladies complain because their husbands say that once or twice and think that they're good for a lifetime. And they'll say, you need to tell me you love me and remind me that you love me. And I love to hear you say, I love you. And you have every right to want that. Forgive us. We just don't operate that way. We think because we said it once 14 and a half years ago on that night that covers us for a lifetime. But you know who else likes to hear us say, I love you? We were created for His pleasure. God loved us so much that He sent Christ to die for us so that He could have us in a relationship with Him, not just so that we can say, I love you once and be covered for an eternity, but God loves to hear us say, I love you. So here's the question. When is the last time you said to God, I love you? I don't answer that, but I probably would guess it's been a while for some of us, if not for all of us. Because we just take it for granted that, well, He knows my thoughts. And, of course, like Peter, you know I love you, Lord. Lovest thou me? You know I love you, Lord. Yeah, but you haven't told me in a while. Make sure you tell the Lord you love Him. Good song, youngsters. All right, John chapter 1. Before we get into the Word, I want to remind everybody, maybe notify some of you that Dave Rest needs our prayers tomorrow morning. He'll be going in for major open heart surgery. It'll last maybe 5, 6, perhaps even more hours. So do pray for him and for Linda and the family. Also pray for Marilyn Tuttle. She is having a cornea transplant on Wednesday. And again, we covet your prayers for my father. He's wrapping up this morning, probably done now, his chemo for this month. But do pray for him as they're trying to figure out what's going on. The transplant right now is off the table until they can figure out what's happening. So they covet your prayers. Keep everyone in prayer. Obviously, be careful with the weather. We're glad to have you with us. We'll see how this afternoon goes for this evening. But let's get something out of the Word this morning. Because we didn't have service last week, the deacons have approved a 2-hour sermon this morning. So I actually even broke the message up. You'll be proud of me to not try to fit it all in once. That doesn't mean I'll be done early, but John chapter 1. We're going to look at investing. The first part today and the second part next week. But if you're hoping it's about investing in finances, you'll be sadly disappointed. It's not. Sir Isaac Newton is by many considered the greatest genius who ever lived. Certainly he is one of the most influential scientists in the world and in human history. He dabbled with physics, mathematics. He was involved with a wide variety of topics, even Bible chronology. But even a man of his intelligence, even a man of his accomplishment and contribution had his critics. It's hard to believe now, looking backwards, of what he's done for society, that he would have anyone who would oppose him and criticize him. But he had his critics, everyone does, and he had a particularly antagonistic critic by the name of Robert Hooke. You say, who was Robert Hooke? I don't know who Robert Hooke is. Obviously, he doesn't have the reputation that Mr. Edison does, but he was another philosopher in England at the time, and he had his own ambition and intellect to deal with. But he and Newton would debate, and they would even get in some of these public debates, and Newton wasn't a very arrogant fella, but he would get involved with this guy, and big brains would use big words, and they would try to prove each other right. But I point all that out to say it's because of Robert Hooke and Newton's rivalry that led to a famous statement that Newton said. They were debating light and refraction and color. And anyways, through the course of that conversation, Newton said these words. He said, what Descartes, another scientist, what Descartes did was a good step. You, referring to Robert Hooke, have added much several ways, and especially in taking the colors of thin plates into philosophical consideration. And then he says this. He says to this philosopher, if I have seen a little further, if I have seen a little further than you, if I have had more knowledge than you, if I have more insight than you, if I have seen a little further, It is by standing on the shoulders of giants. He said, if I have a little more insight than you, and I think that's an intellectual jab at his rival, if I've seen a little more than you, if I've seen a little farther than you, if I've seen a little better than you, it's only because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. Great statement. Here's a guy who could claim all the credit to his own. He could sit back and say, yeah, Mr. Hook and the world, I'm a pretty smart guy, and I came to this on my own conclusion, and I really think that everyone should acknowledge me and what I have discovered or what I have learned. But that's not what he said. He said, what I have seen, I've only seen because I've been on the shoulders of giants, and I can look down and I can look farther down the road, and I have a better understanding because of these great philosophers who have gone on before me, because of these great men who have developed these theories that I can now take and understand and I can apply and refine, and because of all the work of previous people, in fact, great people, giants of the world, I now have the advantage to accomplish more. He was giving credit to his contemporaries. He was giving credit to maybe his ancestors. He was giving credit to other people, saying, yes, I've seen great things, but I wouldn't be able to do it without those people. So great of him to acknowledge that success for any of us hinges on help from others. It was Melinda Gates, the co-founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who said, if you are successful, it is because somewhere, sometime, someone gave you a life or an idea that started you in the right direction. Isn't that true? In fact, think about it. God has designed life for all of us. Adam and Eve are the only exceptions to this rule. But every one of us in this world, if we are to live beyond a week, if we are to live beyond a day, if we are to live to accomplish anything great, it necessitates help from somebody else. Because God designed human life to start in the womb. And when the baby forms in the womb and comes out of the womb, when we come out of the womb, we are, by definition, helpless. Helpless. No one comes out of the womb feeding themselves. No one comes out of the womb mixing up a nice dish and eating their own food. No one comes out of the womb understanding language, being able to speak. No one comes out of the womb ready to drive. No one comes out of the womb walking. No one comes out of the womb doing the things that we absolutely have to do to succeed. So we all have to have help, whether it's from our biological mother or from a nurse or from a doctor or from an aunt or from an adopted parent or from a stranger. We all need help to get us at least from the womb to a place of relative independence. We need parents to feed us. We need parents to teach us. We need adults to guide us. We need doctors to heal us. We need people to help us succeed. So without people, we won't succeed. Without people, we cannot succeed. Amen? We can all agree to that, I hope. You know, the whole self-made man thing, the whole self-made woman thing, it doesn't exist. Certainly some people have greater strengths than others and can do more perhaps than others and can even do more in the face of adversity. But I would argue even those people have learned to become who they are because of being involved with somebody else, and maybe someone else taught them a lesson that they took and ran with. No one does it on their own. That being said, life affords us all the opportunity to help somebody else succeed. Because life is set up for us to rely on the help of others, to get assistance from other people, we have the chance to help somebody succeed. Because people will need us, we can actually be something substantial to someone else. But this will require investing in people. And that's what we're talking about today and next week. We're talking about investing not in the stock market, but in the people market. To give a child the training to succeed, it requires a substantial investment of your life. Moms and dads, you have learned this. It's not something you can do 5 minutes a day and help some child succeed. No, a child needs time. A child needs attention. A child needs constant time and constant attention, and for many, many years. To give a young person the direction to succeed, to give a spouse the help they need, to give any person the guidance they need to succeed. It will require a substantial investment of our time, of our attention, and of our care. Lives are like finances. In order to make money, you have to invest some capital. You just don't get a number at the stock market and get lucky if your number makes money. You've got to put money in. And when it comes to lives and investing lives, you have to put some capital into people. You have to put some relationship capital into people, and that's time, effort, care, emotional energy, and commitment. You say, what does this have to do with growing into Christ? Is that not what defined the very ministry of Jesus Christ? What we know of Christ, which is real, I realize little in the 3 or so decades he lived, but we have for about 3 years a lot of information. And what do we see him doing in those 3 years? Do we see him in a monastery somewhere off in the wilderness with doors and walls closed off to people? Do we see him hiding in the mountains or hiding in the woods? Do we see him on a boat in the middle of the lake all by himself? Do we see Jesus secluded? Do we see him isolated? Do we see him care about no one? Or do we see him changing lives? Do we see him investing in people? Do we see him touching the sick? Do we see him healing the blind? Do we see him teaching the multitudes? Do we see him investing into people? Sure we do. Because that's what he came to do. He came here to invest in people. If you don't like people, then you're the wrong being. You needed to be created a worm. You needed to be created some type of bug in the middle of nowhere. But God made you a person. We're social beings, whether you like it or not. In fact, if you say I'm not social and I don't like people, the fact that we are social proves my point. You don't like who you are when you're not social. It bothers you that you're so uncomfortable around people. Because we're wired. Human nature's wired. Our DNA is people, 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 people. One of the worst things you can do to a person is abandon them on an island. Why? Because we're social. I know for some of you it sounds very fun. It sounds perhaps refreshing. Oh, just if I could have an island all by myself and it would be just me. That would be fun, no doubt, for 10 days. And after 10 days, you'll do anything to get off that island. Jesus invested personal capital into the lives of many people. He was the greatest investor this world has ever seen. And we're going to talk about his investment strategy in the life of one of 12 men he invested in. And this is what we need to look like if we're growing into Christ. We should look like Christ and how he invested into people. So parents, take note what we talk about the next 2 weeks. It is our job to invest into our children so that they might succeed. And our type of investment has to mirror the investment Christ put into his apostles. This is true also for spouses. You say, well, I don't have to invest in my spouse. They're supposed to be all set on their own. We're adults. We're capable people. No. Do you know your spouse has not reached their full potential yet? And you have an opportunity to help them reach that full potential. Well, they don't need my help. You just haven't opened your eyes. Doesn't your spouse have problems? I mean, don't you get in arguments on a weekly basis about your spouse's faults, not yours? That means they haven't reached their full potential. Well, yeah, but they got to figure it out. No, two shall be one. You too have to figure it out. Man, that was good, wasn't that, Jeff? When there's less people, I'm really being bothered by this chair, if you haven't noticed. So we're going to move this violin. Excuse me. I have issues. I like space. I have a friend who watches the stream every week, and he points out all my idiosyncrasies, and he notices that I move the stand every time I start. Well, this chair back there is bothering me. All right, here we go. John chapter 1, verse number 1. Again, the next day after John, referring to the Baptist, stood, and two of his disciples, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he saith, Behold the Lamb of God. And the two disciples heard him speak. Those are two of John's disciples, heard John speak, and they followed Jesus. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and saith unto them, What seek ye? They said unto him, Rabbi, which is to say, being interpreted, Master, where dwellest thou? He saith unto them, Come and see. They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day. For it was about the 10th hour. One of the two which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. Now let's take a quick pause. Let's point out something that's important about the Bible. When the Bible refers to Simon Peter here, who is Andrew's brother, the Bible, John who's writing, refers to Simon Peter as Simon Peter. But at this moment in history, his name is not Simon Peter. His name is Simon Bar-Jonah. All right? That is his legal name, Simon, son of Jonah. That is what everyone would know Peter by. So don't assume that he already had the name Simon Peter before we're about to read these few verses. Why did John write Simon Peter? So you and I and John's readers who would read about this after Peter would convert to Christianity would understand who he's referring to. The same reason that Paul can be referred to as Paul when his name hasn't yet changed. It was Saul. So it's a historical reference to help us understand who he's referring to. That's verse 40. So reading on in verse 41, we read that he, Andrew, first findeth his own brother Simon, and saith unto him, We have found the Messiah, which is being interpreted the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. And when Jesus beheld him, when Jesus saw him, he said, Thou art Simon, the son of Jonah, thou shalt be called Cephas, which is by interpretation a stone. Point number one on Jesus Christ's investment strategy, we are to look for potential in a person. We are to look for a potential in a person. You'll notice in our passage, in our text this morning, that Andrew brings Simon to Jesus, and Jesus just beheld him. Jesus just looked at him. Jesus just took a gander at Simon from all different angles, looked right through into his soul, and beheld him, and just took the time to evaluate his features, to evaluate his character from what he could see. How's he dressed? And look at his hands. Look at the way he stands. I was talking to a business owner recently, and he told me that he will, on interviews, he will take someone into a room, and this person will walk ahead of him. And I said to this boss, this businessman, I said, why do you have someone walk ahead of you? I was thinking maybe he was paranoid that no chairs could be behind him or no people can be behind him. He says, no, I let them walk ahead of me because I watch how they walk. All right. He says if they drag their feet, they don't get a job. Very astute. He's watching people. He's just beholding them. He's just seeing them. He's looking at gauging their character even by just using his eyes. And that's exactly what Jesus did here. Just as with a financial investment strategy, Christ starts with identifying something that has potential. If you're going to invest in the stock market, you have to find a company that you think has potential. You don't have the future ahead of you. You don't have a crystal ball, but you can at least take a look at it. And don't you wish you had a better gauge of success with Home Depot and Walmart and Amazon, some of these companies early on, But that's what we need to do with people. We need to take a look at people and say, that person right there, I think they have something very special inside that needs to be developed. We don't know what it was that Jesus saw in Peter physically or Simon at the time, but he saw something that got his attention, something that spoke of potential, without Peter even saying a word. And so Jesus sees potential in him and immediately puts a deposit down on this guy and says, you are going to be Cephas from now on. I know your name is Simon Bar-Jonah, but we're going to change your last name to Peter. Between you and me, our relationship is such that you may be Simon Bar-Jonah legally, but now as far as our relationship goes, you're Simon Peter. You're Simon Cephas. Cephas being interpreted is a stone. That's not Hebrew, that's not English, that's Aramaic for stone. You say, where does Peter come from? Petros, which is Greek for stone. That is English then to be Peter. So he becomes Simon Peter. Simon Stone. Simon Stone. You are something, there's something about you that I see that you're going to be foundational for my future ministry. I see something in you that just shows you're worth building on, you're worth investing on. I see something in you, Peter. You're a leader. I think I can make you the bedrock of my future ministry. Jesus indeed saw in Peter what Peter was. You know, Peter became a man who would speak before anyone else. Peter would become a man who would do anything before anyone else would. Peter was a man who would step out of the boat on the water when no one else would. He would rebuke the Lord even when no one else would. He would say what everyone else was thinking. He was a leader. He wasn't a follower. He was a strong character, a bold character. And Jesus saw courage in him. Jesus saw fearlessness in him. Jesus saw a man with a strong backbone and a man with grittiness. Cephas, hard as a rock. Petros, strong as a rock. Simon Peter, you are a man who will lead my team of 12. Peter indeed would become exactly that. Of all the men that Jesus invested in, even of James, John, and Peter, the top three tiered, even though Jesus was closer to John, even though he was the disciple that Jesus loved, let's be honest, it wasn't John who would lead the early church. It was Peter. It wasn't John who was preaching to the nation of Israel in Acts chapter 1. It was Peter. It wasn't John that Paul said was the apostle to the circumcision or the apostle to the Jews. It was Peter. Peter was that strength that the team would lead or lean on and follow. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm one of the heretics that believes in Matthew 16 that Jesus was indeed saying he would use Peter to build his church. I'm one of those guys that when Jesus says to him, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God," or Peter says to him, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God," Jesus says in return, "I say also unto thee that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." I believe because of the passage, verse 15, Jesus says, "Thou art Simon Bar-Jonah." Verse 16, after Peter says, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God," then Jesus says, "And thou art Peter." He didn't call him Simon. He didn't call him Simon Bar-Jonah. He called him Peter. And that means stone. And Jesus says, "And upon this rock I will build my church," because indeed he was the man that Jesus built the entire ministry of the apostleship on. And that was the ministry that would begin the church. I realize some don't agree with that. That's fine. You don't need to. But we all would agree Peter was the guy. Right? We can agree with that? This is where you say yes or no. I'm going to invent a church response system. Like, who wants to be a millionaire? We can find out how many of you agree with me or not. And then if you don't agree, we just try to convince you. But do we all agree Peter was the leader of the apostleship? Yes. Do we all agree that he was the guy that Christ handpicked to lead the group? Okay, good. Just making sure. We all agree that Peter's name was given that name because Jesus saw something in him that would indicate a foundation, stone, rock, something like that? Yes? Okay. Why did he see any potential in Peter? Well, the answer is not very difficult, but it's an important one to point out for this point. Why did he see potential in Peter? Because he had his eyes open and he took the time to look at somebody else. Now that may sound way too simple and practical, but here's the thing. Human nature is very different than divine nature. We're supposed to grow into Christ, which means we have to forsake human nature and take on the nature of Christ. And human nature does not look at people. Human nature obsesses with ourselves. Human nature looks at people, but only in this regard. What do they think of me? Human nature says, what will I wear today? Because what will people think of what I wear? Human nature says, what will I do to my hair, to my face today? Because I wonder if people will like it. I want people to like it. I want people to like me. We look at people based on what you can offer me. That's human nature. Christ's nature, he said, I want to see what this person can become. I want to see what that person can become. I want to see what I can do with somebody else's life. And I've got to be able to have my eyes open to do that. I wonder how many children don't get the help they need because they don't get the attention they need. Good parenting isn't just having all the right words to say. Good parenting is having the right eyes to see. This is true for any relationship, whether it be in the house, in a marriage, in a family, or at work, in a mentorship, with coworkers, with a coaching and a player relationship, whatever it is. We cannot help people if we don't give people the attention they need. And we can't give people the attention they need if we're not giving our eyes to other people, looking into their lives. When it comes to potential in people, what you see is really what you get. If you don't see potential in someone, then you won't get anything out of them. If you do see it, the likelihood of you getting it is high. John Maxwell said this, and I quote, "One of the greatest values of mentors is the ability to see ahead what others cannot see and to help them navigate a course to their destination." Now, a lot of us have self-esteem issues. And I don't say that to be funny. I don't say that even to sound like I have any type of knowledge with psychology. But most of us are very insecure. Most of us look in the mirror and we don't like what we see. Most of us can be very down on ourselves. You know what we need somebody else to do for us? Is to look at us from the outside objectively and say, "Hey, pal, here are your strengths. Here are your weaknesses. I can see them as clear as day. This is what you can become." Because most of us don't think we can become anything. All of us are Peters who need a Christ who can say, "Your new name is crush it. Your new name is," and you fill in the blank, because I see something. I've done this recently more than usual, but maybe it's just because of experience now with the ministry or seeing more people, but there have been people I have seen that I'll go home to my wife and say, "Keep an eye on them. They're going to be something very special." I've told some people, "Hey, if you stay on the right track with God, I don't know what it is God has for you, but God has something very big for you." Am I doing that just to inspire them, just to get them in the game, to schmooze them over? No, I don't say that to everybody, but there are some people that I see something special. I don't know what it is, but it's there. And most of those people look at me and just shake their head like, "Well, then you're looking at the wrong person, pal." We have a hard time seeing potential in ourselves. And that's not always because we're humble. So what do you see in people? Have you taken the time to see your spouse? No one achieves success without the help of others. Turn to Matthew 14. Matthew chapter 14, number 2 in our investment strategy, Jesus' investment strategy of people. I will say that he created opportunities for the growth of those people that he invested in. We'll see it very obviously in this passage. Here in Matthew 14, Jesus has already officially invited Peter into the group. He's invited him to follow him so he can make him a fisher of men. He has begun to teach and to disciple his apostles, investing in them and in their success. But here in Matthew 14, he would take the classroom instruction into the field, if you would. And he created an environment and an experience that would change probably all of them, but for sure one of them. In verse 22, he just accomplished feeding 5,000 people, and it says in verse 22 of Matthew 14, "And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away." Now, can we all agree that constraining someone means they probably didn't want to do what he told them to do? Right? It doesn't say that he told them or he asked them or he ordered them. It says he constrained them to get into their ship and go to the other side while he sends the multitudes away. The fact that the Bible gives that detail tells me that they did not want to leave Christ and they did not want to go onto the sea without him, but he wanted them to get out on their own. Okay? Verse number 23. "And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray, and when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the 4th watch of the night," that's very early in the morning while it's still dark, "Jesus went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, 'It is a spirit!' And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, 'Be of good cheer, you big goofballs, it is I. Be not afraid, dummies. It's me. And verse 28 says, Peter. Not Andrew, it says Peter. Not John, it says Peter. Not James, it says Peter. Not Judas. I can go on, but you get the point. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And Jesus said, come. Who asked that question? I guess who would want to come on the water? I mean, if I'm in a boat and I see somebody on there, I'd say, come over here and save us. But Peter says, Peter thinks like no one else thinks. What do we do in moments of crisis? Do we care about growing our faith, or do we care about surviving the day? Right? Most of us just want to get through. We just want to get through this. When we're sick, is our instinct, Lord, I want to grow my faith? Is that my first instinct, or is my first instinct, heal me? Right? We can talk about my faith after you fix me up and I know everything's good and then I'll learn my lessons, but right now heal me. No, Peter didn't say save me, didn't say come stop the storm, didn't say come in the boat. He says, can I come out there? This is a special person. Jesus says, sure, you got it, bud. And we read in verse 29 that Peter was come down out of the ship. He walked on the water to go to Jesus. But, oh man, Matthew, why'd you got to throw this in here? But, could you imagine the story if we didn't know about this part? But the Bible tells us of his failure. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me! And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith. What a rebuke to the other 11. O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Question, did Jesus intentionally orchestrate the events of that evening? The Bible doesn't say that. However, it does tell us he constrained them to get in the boat and go ahead. Jesus has some pretty good power to him. He has a lot of foreknowledge. So, did he make the storm come? He did stop the storm. It's almost like he has the storm on a leash, so I guess he could have. If he didn't make the storm, did he at least know it was coming? Does he have the ability to know the future? Yeah. Did Jesus create this environment, this opportunity for his apostles to learn something? Did he create this opportunity for Peter to experience something? Without a doubt. Without a doubt. There's no question in my mind because Jesus said, guys, get in the water. And he goes into the mountain and prays, and he knows the storm's coming, and he says, all right, the boys are scared to death still. Here we go. And then he goes over and walks in the water. Could he not just have gone on the other side and met them there? Sure. Could he have not just, boop, popped up in the ship? Wind ceased? Sure. But he let the storm go. He let the guys get afraid, and then he intentionally walked on the water to get close to them. Why? To teach his disciples something. Well, what did they learn? You know, Peter learned a lot. He learned that he's not the Son of God. Like I said, had we not known that he began to sink, do you realize the people that would claim Peter to be equal in power to Christ? Because he could walk on water. Yeah, but he began to see the winds and the waves, and his humanity took over, and he began to sink. To which he had to tell himself, oh, there's only one Christ on this team. There's only one Savior here. There's only one Son of God. I am just a man. What was Jesus teaching him? Well, I think he taught him a lot of things, but I know he was giving him an opportunity to grow. We don't grow in our leadership if we don't lead. We don't grow in our courage if we don't exercise our courage. We don't grow in our faith if we don't exercise our faith. And here, Peter is growing because he's exercising his courage. He's exercising his leadership. He's the only one that got out, and he was willing to get out, and he was growing his faith by allowing God to teach him. If he had his eyes fastened on Christ, he would be fine. What happened here? Well, Peter got a lot more respect from the other men. Peter got a lot more courage moving forward. He increased his faith, but he learned about himself. Failure taught him about himself, and that he has limitations. What a defining moment in his life. Failure. Great success immediate failure. Jesus was doing what every parent especially needs to do. Jesus was doing what any great mentor needs to do, and that's provide opportunities for your children, for your students, for whoever it is you're investing in. Provide opportunities for them to exercise what you're teaching them, giving them a chance to grow where they need to grow, to hopefully succeed, but maybe more importantly, giving them an opportunity to fail. Now, who wants your child to fail? Who wants your spouse to fail? Who wants your student to fail? Who wants your player to fail? Who wants your sibling to fail? No one wants them to fail, but failure teaches lessons that success can never teach. I don't have the stats, but I wonder how many great business owners, how many great success stories are successful only because they failed early on. Children who have everything done for them, children who have everything given to them, they will be a failure, but it will be too late for them to learn that lesson. Mothers especially are terrified to let their children fail, and as a result, their children never learn their limitations and tragically never reach their full potential. Moms, but dads as well. If our children are going to grow, if they're going to meet and reach their greatest potential in life, we have to cut the cord. We have to provide storms for them to try to live in. That is how they learn. That is how they grow. Ralph Waldo Emerson said something great. He said, quote, "Our chief want in life is somebody who will make us do what we can." Our chief lack, our chief need in life is that somebody will get us to do what we can do. You think about that. It's tremendous. I can tell you personally, I was blessed by a tremendous mentor. One of the greatest tools that my pastor used in my life, not only did he instruct me and provide counsel and wisdom to me, but he was excellent at giving me opportunities and letting me succeed or fail. He did not micromanage me. He gave me opportunities, and he took his hands off. And I am eternally grateful for my mentor. When it comes to investing in lives, remember this truth. Instruction may be done with the word, but construction is done with opportunity. Instruction is with the mouth. Construction, building people up, is through opportunity. You remember children when they're real young, how they want to help? And adults don't want them to help because they'll mess things up. Can I paint? No. Can I sweep the floor? No. Can I do the dishes? No, I'll do it. Do kids like that, or do they get frustrated? Why can't I help? They want to, right? And then they become teenagers. And you can't make them help. Could that be our fault, parents? Because we said, no. Are we producing lazy children with no ambition, with no eye for work? See, ingrained in the character of mankind is a longing to work. All of us. We do our children a great disservice when we take that longing out, because you might fail. And all of us, we're all guilty of it. Turn to Matthew 16, just 2 chapters over. We're going to go real quick on this point, but this is point number 3, and it's, again, a very important one. Number 1, look for potential in people. Get your eyes open. Get them off yourself. Get them into the souls of others. Number 2, create opportunities for that person to succeed, to fail, to grow ultimately. And number 3, entrust something special to the person you are investing in. Matthew 16, a passage I referenced moments ago, verse 13, when Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" They said, "Some say that thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He says, "Whom do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter, not Andrew, not John, not James, not Levi, not Thomas, not Judas, but Simon Peter answered and said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus answered and said unto him, "Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, legal name. For flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say also unto thee that thou art Peter, spiritual name, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Verse 19, and I, Christ, your mentor, your instructor, will give unto thee, the student, the investee, the stock, I will give unto thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. There's plenty of debate surrounding verse number 18, where Jesus refers to Peter and whatnot. We've talked about that. You and I can disagree if you want. We get to verse 19, there should be no debate who Jesus is talking to. Do we all agree that Jesus is talking to Jesus, or to Peter? Jesus to Peter. We all agree, verse 19? Yes or no? Here we go. Okay. And Jesus says to Peter, I'm going to give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. We all agree that Peter just was told by Jesus to have the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Yes? What does that mean? This is why I'm sure the jokes, maybe not the jokes, or the stories of meeting Peter at the pearly gates, because he has the keys to the kingdom of heaven. This is where they come from. What does that mean? I have no idea. But I know this much. Jesus just gave Peter something pretty special. He didn't say, yeah, you're Peter, and I'm going to build this church, and the gates of hell won't prevail. Oh, by the way, I'll give you an apple. Oh, by the way, I'll give you a video game. By the way, Peter, you rock, man. I'm going to give you a new robe. No, he says, I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. What? This is amazing. Point being, Jesus wasn't waiting for Peter to become perfect before he entrusted something very special to him. Jesus wasn't waiting for Peter to demonstrate perfection and eliminate all the problems. He says, Peter, you have got it right. You understand I'm the Son of the living God. You've got it right that you're committed to me and you're going to follow me wherever I go. You've got it right. I'm going to build my team with you in mind. You're going to be my leader. And by the way, here are the keys. And this is like the father giving his son the keys to the car for the first time and saying, it's all yours, kid. What? I get the keys to the car? Boom! Like, I have arrived. I mean, the young man says, I've got Dad's car. He must trust me. I must be in his eyes everything now. I've attained. This is a moment for Peter to say, what? I get the keys to the car. I get the keys to heaven. I get the keys to the kingdom of heaven. He must really trust me. This is so important when it comes to investing in people. If we can't entrust something special to them, then why will they be motivated to become what we think they can become? In other words, teacher or mentor or instructor or parent or spouse, whoever it is that's trying to develop and cultivate someone, if they say, not sure I can trust you with the lawnmower today. I'm not sure I can trust you with the house. I'm not sure I can trust you with this opportunity. I'm not sure I can trust you with this detail. That speaks volumes as to what type of leader that you're going to be to that person. You see, the more relationship capital you put into someone, the more likely they are to reach their full potential. And this comes in the form of confidence. The more confidence you put into someone, the more trust you give to someone, the more likely they are to meet those expectations, the more likely they are to grow into the person you hope they will be. One of the things that we determined very early in our house was we were not going to baby our children. Even to this day. I'm certainly the harder of the two when it comes to parents, but I don't show a lot of compassion. I don't show a lot of pity. That's not because I don't have it. But I expect a lot from my children. You know what? There won't be any crying unless someone dies or there's some major thing going on. We're going to be tough. We're going to be strong. We're going to, you know why? Because you can. No, it hurts. No, you're fine. If I did the opposite, keep crying, let me get more tissues for you. I just really cultivated this crying spirit or mentality, guess what I would produce? A lack of courage, a lack of strength, a lack of durability. Now, whether we succeed or not, who knows? Time will tell. But what I'm saying is, as a parent, as a leader, whoever you are, investing in someone, what you demonstrate, what your expectations are, what your level of confidence is in someone really determines how much they give back. Those of you who are on the job site, you know that. If you say to someone, hey, good luck with that, make sure you do this, I'm not sure if you can do that, they typically don't produce a good product because they know you don't trust them, and then they're all uneasy and unsure of themselves, and then they typically do what you were afraid that they were going to do. Jesus didn't do that with Peter. He identified potential. He created opportunities for that potential. And as Peter grew, as Jesus saw him growing, he then invested heavily by promising him the keys to the kingdom. Wow, that's impressive. You say, but Pastor, you don't understand. My kid or my spouse or you fill in the blank. You understand what they're like. They're just, I don't know if they'll do it. Well, I get it. Isn't investing kind of a risky business? When you throw your money at some type of investment, there is no guarantee. And that would be nice, wouldn't it? There's no guarantee. You could lose it all. You could lose it all. It's a risk. Your children are a risk. They may fail you. They may hurt you. They may wreck the car. They may break curfew. One of the problems in conservative circles for years, we've told our kids that if they're alone with anyone for any length of time, that they will automatically have a child out of wedlock. Instead of saying, you've been raised with good values, you know what the Lord wants you to do, I trust you. And that's a frightening proposition. And parents right now who have children are saying, Pastor, you're crazy. Because I know what I would have done back then. And maybe our faith just isn't that good. God didn't give us a bubble to live in, people. He gave us a light to guide us through the darkness. I know you're all afraid to say amen too loud. I get it. You cannot. Children in particular are not. What were those things when I was a kid? They were the little foam creatures and little capsules. Remember those little capsules that when you added water, they went into a certain form, but they were kept in a capsule. We think that if we keep our kids in a capsule, that one day we'll just poop in a perfect form of Christianity. That's not how Jesus handled his apostles. He threw them into the storm at times. Then he brought them back into the room and they had the Lord's Supper. He put them out in the open. Then he brought them back in and taught them. And what was it? It was a relationship where you were teaching, exercising, teaching, exercising. Was there risk? Yeah. You know what? Did Jesus lose one? Come on. Did Jesus lose one of the 12? I told you, the longer you go with being silent and quiet, I go farther. Jesus lost one, didn't he? Jesus Christ, like the best teacher ever, the best investor ever, the best mentor, the Son of God, perfect, foreknowledge, doesn't make a mistake, doesn't oversee or forget anything. He's perfect, and yet he lost one. It's a risk. But investing in people requires us to take some risks. Risks that are governed by principles in the Scripture. I know it's a scary proposition, and don't worry, I'm not asking you to do anything that you're uncomfortable with. I'm just trying to get you to think. I guess I have the same philosophy that Dr. Gipp has. Your children will perform better when you demonstrate some trust in them, when you entrust them, when you give a vote of confidence to them. Even in a marriage, husbands and wives, think about what you don't trust each other with. When your spouse says to you, I don't really trust you with this or with that, does that motivate you or demotivate you? Yeah, it does. It never motivates. It sounds simple. But maybe telling someone, I believe in you, and then giving them something special, you might just get out of them what you see. Let's stand and have a word of prayer. We'll look at the final points next.